Picture a crowded room filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and music thumping in the background. In the middle of it, there's me, smiling at a friend's story. Outwardly, I seem fine, maybe even outgoing. But inside, my heart is pounding, and my energy is dwindling with each passing minute. I scan for a quiet corner or an exit, craving a moment alone to breathe. Am I shy, bored, antisocial? Not at all. I'm an introvert and an INFJ, which means introversion is at the very core of my personality. In fact, INFJ is often considered the rarest of the 16 Myers-Briggs types, estimated at less than 1% of the population, so feeling a bit different is basically my norm. Hi, I'm Lisa, and I'd like to take you on a journey inside the mind of an INFJ introvert. We'll explore why I and other INFJs can seem like walking contradictions, lighting up with warmth and empathy one moment, then desperately needing solitude the next. We'll dive into the neuroscience of what's going on in an introvert's brain, see how my introversion might not look quite the same as that of an INTJ or INFP, and even bust some myths about what being an introvert really means. By the end, I hope you'll not only understand the I in INFJ, but also appreciate the quiet power it holds. So settle in, maybe grab a cup of tea, I've got mine right here, and let's unravel the secret world of INFJ introversion together. Before we get specific about INFJs, let's clarify what introversion itself means. A lot of people confuse introversion with shyness or social anxiety, but they're not the same. Introversion, in the classic sense, is about where you get your energy, while extroverts feel energized by being around people and busy environments. Introverts recharge by spending time in their inner world, their thoughts, memories, and imagination. In other words, introverts draw power from solitude and reflection rather than external stimulation. For me, that means after a few hours of socializing, even if I'm having fun, I start to feel like a phone battery stuck on 1%. My energy drains because I'm expending it outward, tuning into everything around me. To recharge, I need some quiet time, maybe curled up at home with a book or just sitting in comfortable silence. Extroverts often can't relate to how good being alone can feel to an introvert. It's not that I dislike people, it's that my brain is wired to process things deeply, and it finds calm in low stimulation settings. Susan Cain, author of Quiet, famously described introverts as preferring a quiet, more minimally stimulating environment. That resonates with me. I love intimate conversations or solitary creative projects where my mind can dive deep without a dozen loud distractions. In contrast, throw me into a high-energy crowd for too long and I'll feel overstimulated, like a radio that's suddenly turned up way past comfortable volume. It's also worth noting that introversion is not the same as being shy. Shyness is a fear of social judgment or discomfort in social settings, whereas introversion is simply the preference for less stimulation and more alone time. An introvert can be perfectly confident giving a speech or performing on stage. I've done both, yet still choose a quiet night in over a wild party, simply because that's what refuels us. In my case, for example, I used to perform in school plays and loved connecting with an audience on something meaningful. But put me in a post-show cast party full of small talk, and you'd find me in the kitchen petting the cat or stepping outside for air. My friends were surprised. "You were so lively on stage. Why are you so quiet now?" The answer: I wasn't nervous or upset. I had just used up my social energy and needed to retreat to my inner world to recharge. Key point: introverts like me can enjoy being with people, but we have an internal battery that depletes with too much external activity. We regain strength in solitude. Understanding this was a light bulb moment for me, realizing, oh, there's nothing wrong with preferring a night of Netflix or journaling after a day of meetings. It's just how I'm wired. So introversion equals energy from within, but INFJ introversion, that has its own special flavor. Let's talk about that. They call INFJs the most extroverted of the introverts. When I first heard that, I laughed. It sounds like an oxymoron, right? But it makes sense. As an INFJ, I genuinely love people. I'm deeply interested in human nature. I care about others' feelings, and I can even be quite talkative when discussing passions or helping someone one-on-one. My friends often see me as warm, friendly, and easy to talk to. I've been told I'm a great listener and give off a sociable vibe. Because of that, sometimes people assume I'm an extrovert. You, an introvert? No way, you're so good with people, they say. Little do they know that being good with people doesn't change the fact that it drains me like nothing else. Here's the INFJ paradox. We may seem outgoing, but the cost of being outgoing is higher for us than for a true extrovert. I'll happily engage in meaningful conversation. In fact, deep one-on-one chats are my favorite. I'll smile, nod, empathize, maybe even charm the room for a while, especially if I'm discussing something or someone I care about. This ability comes partly from a core INFJ trait, extroverted feeling, or FE in Myers-Briggs terms. FE is all about tuning into others' emotions and creating harmony. In my life, that means I'm very aware of how people around me feel. I can often sense when someone's uneasy or if there's tension under the surface. And because I value harmony, I'll often step up to comfort, mediate, or just be a supportive presence. That might look extroverted. For example, I might take the initiative to include a lonely person at a gathering, or I might speak up to cheer on a friend, all very people-focused behaviors. What people don't see, however, is that my INFJ brain is working overtime under the hood. Whenever I meet someone new, I'm not just idly chatting, I'm quietly observing and intuiting a lot of information. INFJ's dominant function is introverted intuition, which basically means I'm constantly processing patterns and deeper meanings in my head. So at a social event, while I may appear calm and receptive, inside I'm gathering impressions. Is this person genuine or are they putting on a front? What's the vibe in this room? Joyful, tense, superficial? My intuition is tapping into people's emotions and quirks, and I'm figuring out how best to respond. That initial scanning and processing takes energy. Unlike an extrovert who might gain energy simply by chatting with someone, I gain energy only once I've gotten comfortable and made an authentic connection. Until then, I'm spending energy observing and adjusting. As one article aptly put it, extroverts get energized as they talk to someone, but an INFJ only really gets that energy after we've understood and connected with the person on a deeper level. Before that happens, interacting can actually drain us. This explains why, in large or unfamiliar groups, I often start quiet and reserved. I'm not bored or snobbish, I'm assessing and absorbing. My close friends have even described me as mysterious or hard to get to know at first. That's because I hang back initially, watching how others interact, gauging the dynamics. I might not jump into the loud, rapid-fire banter, but trust me, I'm paying keen attention, especially if someone there intrigues me. Once I feel I truly get someone or the conversation turns deep, a switch flips. Suddenly, I'll open up passionately, surprising everyone who thought I was just shy. INFJs often come alive in one-on-one or small, intimate settings where we can talk about meaningful topics. We prefer quality over quantity in relationships. I'd rather have one soul-bearing conversation than a dozen surface-level chats. That's why many acquaintances see me as polite but quiet, whereas my close friends know I can talk their ear off for hours about life, dreams, and everything in between. An example. I attended a party last year and spent most of the night listening in a group without saying much. There was a lot of light conversation I didn't feel like inserting myself into. Then someone mentioned they were struggling with a personal loss. I immediately tuned in. The group thinned out, and a few of us ended up in a deep late-night talk about grief, purpose, and healing. I shared some of my own experiences and insights, and suddenly I was animated, fully engaged. That night, I essentially played two roles. First, the wallflower observer, then the compassionate confidant. Both roles are me, but it took the right context for my inner extrovert to show. By the end of the night, I'd connected deeply with that person and also completely burned through my social battery. I went home utterly exhausted, but also content that my presence actually helped someone. This is INFJ, introversion in action. We'll invest our limited social energy into what feels purposeful. It's important to note that even when INFJs act extroverted, we still need to withdraw and recharge like any introvert. We might even need more recovery time because we tend to absorb others' emotions like a sponge. That woman I talked with about her loss, I carried some of her sadness home with me in my heart. INFJs are sometimes called empaths for that reason. We literally feel what others feel, thanks to that extroverted feeling function paired with our intuition. It's a powerful gift, but it can be overwhelming. In large crowds, for instance, I can sense so many emotional undercurrents at once that it becomes like psychological noise. That's one reason I often seek the edges of a crowd or take bathroom breaks just to be alone for a moment. Even positive high-energy environments like a concert or big celebration can tire me out because I'm subconsciously mirroring all that excitement. To most casual friends or coworkers, I might seem very sociable, cracking jokes in a small group, empathetically listening, volunteering to help organize the team lunch. This often causes confusion when I abruptly hit a wall and need to retreat. I've had to explain to friends, "I'm going home now, I need some quiet time," only to have them reply, "But you're having fun, aren't you?" I am, and I'm also spent. One thing that differentiates INFJs from some other introverted types is exactly this. We can turn it on and be quite engaging thanks to our people-focused side, but we also have a strict internal limit. Once that limit is reached, we must unplug. It might come suddenly. We seem fine, then boom, the social butterfly morphs back into a pumpkin, haha. If we don't get that alone time, we risk burnout or even resentment. I've learned to recognize those internal signals: drooping focus, irritability creeping in, an intense craving to be anywhere quiet, and politely exit before I hit meltdown mode. In truth, INFJs are like all introverts in that we are selective about who we let into our inner world. We may know a lot of people, but we typically have a small circle of true friends. We give a lot of ourselves to others, our time, our emotional support, our attention, so we're careful to invest that energy in relationships that truly matter. That's why an INFJ might appear extroverted socially, but still say their best Friday night is one spent with their one favorite person, or even alone in peaceful reflection. We guard our private time fiercely because that's what sustains us. So yes, INFJs can be extroverted introverts. We're walking a tightrope, drawn to helping and connecting with people, yet fundamentally needing solitude to survive. It's a tricky balance that I navigate every day. When I'm in balance, it feels like a superpower. I can understand others deeply and inspire them, and I can retreat to my rich inner life for creativity and renewal. When I'm out of balance, too much people time, not enough me time, I become a husk of myself, exhausted, cranky, maybe even depressed. Over the years, I've gotten better at explaining this to the people around me. I'll say, "I love you guys, but I'm peopled out and need to recharge at home. Catch you later." Good friends get it, and if they don't, I gently educate them. Before I move on, let me summarize this INFJ brand of introversion with an image. Imagine a friendly lighthouse. A lighthouse beams light outward, guiding and comforting ships. That's our INFJ empathy and sociability. But a lighthouse also stands alone on a quiet shore, solid and solitary against the elements. It needs that isolation to do its job well. Likewise, I beam outward to others when needed, but I stand alone to regain strength. Both aspects are essential. Now that we've looked at how introversion manifests in INFJs, you might wonder, how is that different from, say, how an INTJ or an INFP experiences introversion? Let's compare, because not all introverts are alike. Not all introverts recharge or behave in social settings in the same way. Personality type matters. As an INFJ, my way of being an introvert can differ quite a bit from my INTJ or INFP friends, even though all of us are I-types. Here are a few key differences I've noticed and that personality experts highlight. INFJ versus INTJ. My INTJ friend, we'll call him Dan, is also an introvert and a fellow intuitive, but wow, do we diverge when it comes to socializing. INFJs like me lead with feeling and empathy, whereas INTJs lead with logic and analysis. Practically, this means I'm highly tuned into people. I instinctively consider others' needs, moods, and feelings in any situation. Dan, on the other hand, is more detached in social settings. He's focused on ideas, plans, and efficiency. For example, if we both walk into a networking event, I'll be reading the room's emotional tone and maybe seeking one meaningful conversation, while Dan will be evaluating what information or contacts he can gain and might skip chit-chat entirely. I try to make others comfortable, sometimes at the expense of my own comfort, whereas he doesn't see the point of small talk and can come off a bit blunt, not because he's mean, but because I, INTJs, value directness and time saving. After an event, both of us will be exhausted, introvert solidarity, but we were drained by slightly different things. I'm drained from empathizing and social smoothing. He's drained from the mere fact of having to be around people and away from his solo projects. Another difference, INFJs appear warmer and more approachable, while INTJs often give off a serious, business-like vibe. I smile and nod a lot when listening, throw in the occasional "I hear you" or supportive gesture, essentially playing the social harmony game that Faye is so good at. Dan, the INTJ, tends to skip those niceties. He'll delve into a complex topic or not talk at all. People might label me friendly and him aloof, even though internally he might care about his friends just as much. He just doesn't express it as readily. Finally, an INFJ like me might compromise more in social decisions, going along with what others want to keep everyone happy, whereas an INTJ is more likely to stick to their own agenda or bow out of an activity that doesn't interest them. Both of us as introverts need alone time, but I might put off my alone time a bit if someone really needs my help, and then really crash later. Whereas Dan has no qualms saying, "No, I'm spent," and disappearing when he's done. INFJ versus INFP. The INFJ's feeling cousin, INFP. One letter different and a whole world of nuance. My friend Sarah is an INFP, and at first glance, we seem very similar. Both quiet, idealistic types who love art and deep conversations. But here's a big difference. I have extroverted feeling, she has introverted feeling. What does that mean without the jargon? Well, I externalize a lot of my concern. I worry about others' feelings. I strive to maintain harmony around me. Sarah internalizes her feeling. She's deeply in tune with her own values and emotions. In a social context, I'm the one checking, is everyone having a good time? Does anyone need a refill or a listening ear? Meanwhile, Sarah is more likely checking in with herself. Am I comfortable here? Do I feel a connection with these people? If the answer is no, an INFP might quietly slip away or emotionally distance themselves. INFJs with FE sometimes engage even when we don't want to, out of obligation or kindness, but then we pay the price in burnout. Another difference, INFJs tend to appear more structured and organized, whereas INFPs are more free-spirited and spontaneous. I might plan out my week carefully, including when I'll socialize or when I'll get downtime, and I like closure. Sarah is more go with the flow. She might decide last minute whether she's in the mood to go out, based entirely on how she feels that day. As a result, sometimes I end up in social situations I scheduled myself into,
smiling at
but
Sam
don't really
like the
have
rest of them.
energy
But
for
inside,
anymore.
my heart is
Classic
knocking on my ribs.
INFJ
Every laugh costs
overcommitting.
more energy than.
Whereas Sarah will simply bail if she's not feeling it, even if she intended to come earlier. In conversation, INFJ's extroverted FE can make us seem quite socially adept. We know how to mirror etiquette and make others comfortable. INFPs can be a bit more reserved or awkward initially because they're not as concerned with social rules. They're more like authentic observers who speak up when something truly resonates. Once you get to know both, though, you'll find INFPs have an ocean of passion inside. They might express it through writing, art, or heartfelt bursts of speech, while INFJs reveal their depth through insightful analysis and caretaking gestures. Both types are compassionate, but I'd say INFJ shows compassion by actively taking care of others' emotional needs, whereas INFP shows compassion by deeply understanding others' struggles, often relating it to their own values and feelings. And one more funny contrast. People often call INFJs extroverted introverts, as we discussed, because we can seem outgoing. Rarely would someone call an INFP an extroverted introvert. Sarah, for instance, wears her introversion on her sleeve more openly. If she's quiet and needs space, she'll just quietly drift into a corner with a book, not feeling a need to perform socially. I might continue smiling and engaging longer than I want due to that fee-driven sense of duty or politeness, and only later vanish when I hit a breaking point. In short, INFJ introversion is a bit of a social chameleon act followed by collapse, whereas INFP introversion is more consistently reserved with selective bursts of FI passion. We both need plenty of alone time to process. She'll write poetry, I'll journal analytic insights, but the way we behave around others differs. Of course, every individual is unique. Not every INFJ or INTJ will match the exact descriptions, but recognizing these patterns helped me understand, for example, why my INTJ friend can tune out emotions in a room. He literally isn't wired to absorb them like I am, or why my INFP friend feels so intensely and personally about things. Her own feelings are her compass, whereas mine are often guided by others' needs. It's fascinating to see that introversion doesn't come in just one flavor. An INTJ, INFJ, INFP, ISTJ, etc. may all value solitude, but what we do in that solitude and how we operate in society can be wildly different. INFJs often straddle an odd middle line, people-centric introverts. We crave people and we crave not people, if that makes sense. Understanding this has made me more patient with myself and more appreciative of other introvert styles. I don't get upset when Dan bluntly declines an invite. I know he's preserving his energy just as I sometimes need to. And I don't get offended if Sarah slips away early or seems out of it in a group. I know she's listening internally and will open up when she's ready. We're all dancing to the beat of our own inner drums. Now let's get a bit nerdy in a friendly way and peek into the neuroscience of introversion. Why do our brains act like they do? Why do extroverts and introverts feel so different in the same situation? Science confirms we're wired in distinct ways, and understanding this can help us appreciate why introverts behave as we do. Dopamine, often called the reward chemical, makes you feel pleasure and motivation. Extroverts have more dopamine receptors, needing more stimulation to get that happy buzz, seeking out lively environments. Introverts, however, are more sensitive to dopamine. A little goes a long way, and too much can quickly lead to overwhelm. This is why introverts might feel anxious or exhausted in overstimulating environments, needing to downshift from dopamine overload. Next, think of your brain like a radio with a volume knob controlling how alert you feel from the environment. Research suggests introverts naturally have their brain volume turned up higher to start with, making them more alert. Extroverts, by contrast, have a naturally lower baseline of cortical arousal, needing more external input to reach optimal alertness. This explains why a calm environment feels right for introverts, while extroverts seek stimulating settings. Thankfully, introverts also enjoy acetylcholine, a neurochemical that rewards quiet, introspective activities. It makes us feel relaxed, pleasantly alert, and content when deeply focused on reading, writing, or gardening. Brain imaging shows introverts have more blood flow in regions for internal processing, like the frontal lobes. Extroverts show more blood flow in areas for sensory and emotional experience, like the anterior cingulate gyrus. This means introverts focus inward on thought and reflection, while extroverts process external information. Knowing these neurological differences has been a game changer, validating the introvert's lived experience. It's not all in my head in a dismissive sense, it's in our very biochemistry, leading to self-acceptance. Introversion is not about shyness, it's about energy management. Many introverts love talking about topics that interest them. Introverts have rich, deep emotions, but often keep them private, processing feelings internally or in solitude. We value human connection, but prefer it in smaller doses or with a tighter circle, prioritizing quality over quantity. Introverts can enjoy social events, especially with the right people and environment, and for a reasonable length of time. To thrive, introverts should schedule recharge time, planning downtime after busy periods. Creating an introvert sanctuary, a designated quiet space, can do wonders for recharging quickly. Communicate your needs gently to friends and family, explaining that alone time is necessary self-care. Leverage your strengths like deep listening, empathy, and creative thinking, which are incredibly useful. Find compatible companions who respect your energy needs, whether introverts or understanding extroverts. Practice self-compassion and acceptance. Introversion is a legitimate personality trait with its own strengths. The world needs its quiet types, the listeners, thinkers, and creators who contribute profoundly. Introversion is not a weakness to overcome. It's a temperament to be understood and embraced. Thank you for coming along on this journey with me. I'm Lisa, an INFJ, an introvert, and I wouldn't have it any other way.